I'm going to tell you which stats actually matter at the running back position if you want to crush on DraftKings and FanDuel. We're starting right now. What's up, guys? Welcome to another daily fantasy sports video. If this is your first time here and you want to become a profitable DFS player and get better at betting, start now by subscribing to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything along the way. And if you're already a Holkamaniac, you know exactly what time it is. Smash that like button and we'll get rolling. My rushing expectation methodology, essentially, I'm kind of just using a linear regression and just trying to quantify the offensive line quality versus the efficiency that running back had through different lanes, through the air, and on the ground. So that sort of thing, like as far as like, does talent not matter at all at running back, or is there at least some value in like trying to identify guys that if they are put in better situations are starting to see more volume? Do you think there is value in trying to identify talent at all at running back? And then we can kind of move on to a few things.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing, because I always wanted to find the talent signal, not because it helps in the game itself, but because it might lead to more volume, and that really helps with DFS and it helps with fantasy. I really wasn't able to find it. Like, for instance, people say, well, if you're good at pass pro, you're going to, coaches are going to like that. They're going to get you more snaps. Well, it just turns out not to be true. I looked at PFF rushing, pass blocking grade in season, and it just doesn't happen that guys who are really good at pass pro get more snaps on average. It's not something you can rely on. And I think what coaches are actually doing when they say that pass pro matters is they're weeding out their roster before the cut to 50. They want guys who, when the shit hits the fan, pardon me if I can't swear here, but when
you can do whatever you want.
when things go wrong in a play, they want to know that they have players on their team in the backfield that are at least adequate blockers, so that their quarterback doesn't get killed. But after that, they're not actually prioritizing pass protection. They're prioritizing trying to win, and they want to put the guy in there who feels the best, whether or not he's good at pass pro or not. Breaking tackles is a skill. It's absolutely something that sticks with a running back. We saw it with Dalvin Cook, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb. They were all great tackle breakers coming out of college. They remained great tackle breakers in the NFL. That's a skill you can count on. But the distribution of outcomes for a rushing play is so narrow that even if you break, so every play in the NFL, you got 11 on 11, everyone knows that, but you got the quarterback, so it's actually 10 on 11. So the running back always has a man. If he can break a tackle, he's going to get more yards. That's a good thing. The problem is that it only gets you like a yard or two more, because once you're done breaking that tackle or you've evaded that one guy you're supposed to, unless it's blocked incredibly and you're at the second level with lots of open field, those can turn into shot plays. Those can turn into big old chunk plays. But more often than not in the NFL, running play is a very, very small range of outcomes. And so even if you're really good at breaking tackles, you're only getting maybe another yard on the play. And so I looked at, do guys who break more tackles, do they get more opportunity? When over the period that I looked at it, I didn't find that it was true. But I think that's changing because of analytics and because teams have looked at what separates running backs and what can they count on. And I have noticed that guys who, like Jordan Howard, for instance, who used to be good at breaking tackles, he did get signed by the Eagles, and it does look like he's going to get some run this year. And that probably wouldn't have happened in the past if there weren't analytically minded teams out there looking at the problem.
Yeah, looking at things like elusiveness rating at PFF is one of those stats that's definitely a lot more sticky at running back. By the way, guys, if you've ever found value in any of my videos or live streams, one of the best ways to support what I'm doing here for free is to throw me the follow over on Twitter. And if you're new to the community, I also do a ton of content exclusive to Instagram and LinkedIn. So if you could take a few minutes and just make sure you're following me over there as well, I really appreciate it. Some of these things I think really matter. Some of these things I don't think matter as much. One of the things that I haven't seen affect ownership a ton, and then we can move on from any type of defense stats. But one thing at Football Outsiders that they have is just a team's ability to defend running backs in the passing game. Is there any validity to that, at least at the tail? So talking about like Atlanta, everyone wants to talk about how the Falcons give up a ton to pass catching running backs. Is there anything to that?
I looked at that last year, actually. I don't know who I was talking with about it. It might have been Scott Barrett or it could have been Lord Reeves. I don't remember. But the idea was if you look at the averages for that one particular team, it looks like they do a lot of passing to their running backs. But then the test was, well, look at it against this different coverage. Like, you'll see they do it more. And it turned out, no, that wasn't the case. I think there are teams who are more effective at passing to their running backs. And I think that there are teams like the Chiefs, for instance, who don't do it a lot, but when they do, it's hyper efficient. And the way they actually design the plays and scheme them is actually super awesome. And you can really rely on when those running backs do get their chances that they'll probably have some good numbers. Problem is, it's low volume. It's a low volume offense in that regard. And what you really want in fantasy is, regardless of efficiency, you want volume. So it's kind of a trade-off there. But yeah, no, in general, I haven't found it to be the case that you can reliably say that teams are heavier passes to running backs than others. On the margins, you can. It's more than defense doesn't matter. Like, there's more signal than defense doesn't matter. It's certainly something that some people have been able to make profitable. It's just not something I added to my toolbox.
As far as a data perspective for DFS, is there really much else we need to be looking at besides projected touches? I know I saw a study from Chris Raybon, I think it was 2 years ago. He was talking about total yards per game and how it could actually be almost as predictable as touches. He was kind of skewing towards a player like Alvin Kamara at the time, who was definitely running hot as far as efficiency, but total yards per game will kind of let you back into some of those sort of things that might be a little bit at least comparable to projected touches. So any thoughts on things we should be looking at running back?
Total yards per game is one of the most powerful predictors we have for performance.
Awesome.
And the main reason why is you can take a longer look at a player's performance, eliminate injury games where there was injury, which is completely random. And it gives you a better kind of measure of not only that player's, obviously his skill, there's efficiency in that number, but mainly it's a volume. And that's what Zeke is. Zeke is this guy who just is elite at getting volume from the Dallas Cowboys. And so you see it in that per game yardage total. He just consistently gets the rock, whether it's through touches in the air or on the ground. So yeah, I absolutely agree with Raybon that taking per game averages is quite good. It's probably better than taking fantasy point averages, because those include touchdowns, which are pretty random. So I would highly recommend kind of leaning on the yardage per game totals and whatever target and touch per game totals you might come up with.
And so as far as sample size on that sort of thing, you said the bigger the better. So if I'm just looking at the last four games for total yards per game, is that just completely worthless? Because that was one of the things I was trying to break it up a little bit smaller to try and get guys that have at least seen more opportunity lately. Is there an efficient way to do that, or not really?
In season, I think that's worthwhile, especially if you have reason to believe something might have changed. Mm-hmm. If you're ever curious, go ahead and do it. But in general, if it's the same coordinator, the same basic team, same basic structure, chopping up your sample size is usually less predictive than taking a larger one.
Okay, good to know. And as far as the Vegas stuff, a lot of that stuff on here is just to try and get an idea of what game flow is going to be like for that specific week, spread, that sort of thing. We know that those things are at least valuable to figure out where ownership is going to be at running back. One thing, and then we'll move on from running back. I do kind of like to look at what quarterbacks historically actually throw passes to their running backs, because there are a certain amount of guys, like obviously Tom Brady, those type of guys, or Drew Brees will throw to their running backs a ton. People know that, but there's also some people that don't throw to their running backs a ton. And before Christian McCaffrey, Cam Newton was one of those guys who very rarely threw to his running back. So is that something that at least over a longer sample we could look at if we're trying to split hairs on a guy that may or may not be effective in the passing game?
Perhaps, but I think a lot of that is just what you suggested, which was, Cam wasn't a guy who threw to running backs until he had a guy that he should throw to. And then, they changed. Well, he's a first-round draft pick, so that's a huge signal. But they changed their offense for that player to take advantage of his specific talents. And, I mean, that's rational coaching. That's what you would expect. And when that works out, it's awesome. Because, coaches are doing what we would expect them to do. They're doing the thing that makes a lot of sense. So, I think that using history in that way is what a lot of people argue that people like me that do analytics don't take into account, right? We don't take into account context. We lump everything into large macro averages and then make spurious, conclusions or correlations. So I think in this case, in the case of guys like McCaffrey, I think you can see how they would be right if we were to say going into a season with a first-round pick spent on McCaffrey, who's great in the passing game, if we didn't think that he would actually get some targets from Cam Newton just because Cam never did it before.
If you want to learn more about how to become a profitable daily fantasy sports player and better, start now by hitting the subscribe icon in the bottom right-hand corner so you don't miss anything. Be on the lookout for all of my DFS content starting with these videos right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.